Get the home field advantage every time with Fairfield by Marriott, official hotel partner of the NCAA. Whether you're a student athlete working toward your championship dreams or your team's biggest fan, Fairfield by Marriott has everything you need to get ready for game day. From comfortable guest rooms to complimentary hot breakfast, Fairfield is part of the Marriott Bonvoy portfolio of hotels and official hotel partner of the NCAA. Visit fairfield.marriott.com to book your next game day stay.
At Grainger, we're for the ones who specialize in saving the day and for the ones who've mastered the art of keeping business moving. We offer industrial-grade supplies for every industry with same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders, all backed by real people ready to help. So you can get the right answers and products right when you need them. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
The United States Border Patrol has exciting and rewarding career opportunities with the nation's largest law enforcement organization. Earn great pay, outstanding federal benefits, and up to $20,000 in recruitment incentives. Learn more online at cbp.gov/career/USBP.
Welcome into The Verge, a show which covers the Baltimore Orioles minor leagues. The Verge is part of BSL Radio. Baltimore Sports and Life is dedicated to analysis and discussion on the Orioles, Baltimore Ravens, and the University of Maryland. The site has a team of writers providing coverage of those teams and houses live streaming content weekly. Join the conversations at the message board, like BSL on Facebook, and follow BSL on Twitter.
Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since we discovered Spotify for Podcasters, we feel like having options like video podcasts and Q&A lets us be more creative on another level. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
Welcome to On the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Thielen and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to get into the dominance of Grayson Rodriguez at AAA Norfolk in his most recent start, the professional debut of Carter Baumler, the major league debut of Cody Sedlock, injury news surrounding Jahmai Jones, and much more. But first, we're going to talk MLB draft with tonight's guest. He is a writer of Prospects Live. He is Will Hoefer. Will, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on here.
We're glad to have you here. And I'll start with this question. It looks like it's probably a 5-player field of contenders for that first overall pick. Would you agree with that? And if so, who do you think is in that mix?
I'm looking at our board right now. I'd say it's probably about 4 or 5 players. Maybe 4. I can't see more than 5. It's Drew's obviously been at the top of the list pretty much, since the start of the spring. And Jackson Holliday has kind of played his way up boards, shortstop out in Oklahoma. Can't get better bloodlines than being the son of Matt Holliday. So, and then you get Termarr out here in Georgia. I've seen him a ton, as well as Druw. Elijah Green down in Florida. Really, actually, it's kind of been a bit mercurial, but has worked his way, I think, back into that 1-1 conversation by cutting down the strikeouts this spring. Incredibly toolsy. And then Brooks Lee, I think, has kind of been a feature at the top of the board as one of the top college players taken. There's some other college bats that I think are interesting, but Brooks is probably the best fit for the Orioles, considering his contemporary at the top of the board, Kevin Parada. Even if you don't think he sticks at catcher, it's not the greatest fit in Baltimore with Adley behind the plate, Ryan Mountcastle at first, Trey Mancini at first. It's just kind of in that catcher first base, medley. It's not the best fit there. So yeah, 4 to 5. That it'd be Druw, Brooks, Elijah, Jackson, Holliday, and Termarr Johnson. Sorry. That's probably the 5 I would take, and I'm assuming that's probably closely aligned to the 5-year hearing as well.
Yeah, that's what we kind of assumed as well. And it's kind of hard to believe that the draft's still 6 weeks away. It feels like it should be getting close. I'm not sure if I like this later draft. How do you feel about that?
I mean, it does. It gives me a little bit more time to put out my reports this June. So I appreciate that. But I'm generally with you. I would like to think that in June I can move on to start looking at 2023s, and that's mostly what I'm going to be doing. But it clogs up so many things. I know, for instance, I don't know how well publicized this is, but starting tomorrow in the Sun Belt League, Termarr Johnson, RJ Austin, Christian Jackson, just a bunch of like high-end preps in Georgia are going to be playing for the Atlanta Blues in the Sun Belt League. And it's just something that really hasn't occurred before in that league. And it's really almost entirely credited to the draft being, pushed back into mid-July. They saw an opportunity to get into a wood bat league where they can, go out there, play, get some data for teams. From what conversations about it, it's the decision-making process isn't going to be that shifted one way or the other. I mean, they're going to have area guys been on, these players for 2-3 years now. And certainly for the past 12 months, pretty hard. But it does clog up things. In the collegiate summer league level is the most noteworthy example, particularly with 2022 players. This is kind of a unique example, but the more broader example that we saw last year that's playing out this year as well is that there's going to be a ton of these summer leagues with 2022 eligible college players that are really going to kind of dominate the first half of that summer. And the second half is when you're going to see the 2023s kind of really take back the lion's share of the playing time, what they used to have had, prior to the draft being moved back about a month. So those are just kind of some of the ways that this draft being moved back, and it is really stretching scouts thin as well. Going out, there'll be a ton of, guys from the area where I'm at, and I know they're going to be going out to like the Appalachian League, going to be going out to the Coastal Plains League. So all these, lower level summer leagues, just to see some of these 2022s that could pop up and really, show something. And it kind of takes, there's only so much time in the day, and there's only so many places you can be. And that's taking time away from, summer showcase circuit, private workouts, just other things that they could be doing. So those are kind of the effects that I think we've seen the past year or so. And in this upcoming year with the draft being moved back to mid-July.
Yeah, that all makes a lot of sense. And it seems like Druw Jones has started to separate himself a bit as the top talent, at least based on the list we've been reading in the reports. What are some of his strengths and weaknesses, just for the uninitiated?
Well, I mean, the strengths are almost about everything. It's one of the top prep guys to come across the pike in a long, long time. We're talking, speaking of bloodlines, he's the son of the greatest defensive center fielder of all time, and Andrew Jones. I know in my report it's plus tools almost across the board. 6'3", 180, 6'4", 185, wherever you have him. An incredibly lean, large, projectable body. Great bat speed, pitch recognition, supremely confident in the power developing, and it's already been shown off. Incredibly high level performer over the summers against some of the best competition that he could face at any given time. I double plus arm, double plus speed right now. That Verge had to get down to plus speed, plus hit, plus power. It's all there. The simple way to put it is, it's hard to think of it. You have to really work hard to put down weaknesses on a report for Druw, and that's what you expect to see out of a bona fide 1-1 like him. With that said, given the way the draft works, it's a money game. It's not necessarily about taking the best player available at any given time. It would be a lot simpler if it were like that, like possibly the NFL draft. But there's a certain select amount of pool money, and if the Orioles think that they can take somebody other than Druw at 1-1, save some money, and push it back into getting higher end talent with their second, third, fourth, fifth round picks, what have you, that's certainly not unprecedented for the Michael Elias regime, and that's why you're seeing those 4 to 5 names there. But if it'd be hard for me to take a list seriously where we're ranking everybody on their future potential in this draft and not having Druw 1-1.
Love that, because he's my favorite so far to this point. And I think I've said before that, honestly, without having watched him play live at this point, it's really just because of his dad. And I'm glad you said he's the greatest defensive center fielder of all time there. But you kind of segue into that with the Michael Elias regime, their previous strategies, the fact that the top of the draft is those first few rounds, it's a money game as well. What should we make of the speculation that Brooks Lee is the possible 1-1 choice if the Orioles decide to save a little bit of money with that 1-1 pick? And has he really separated himself from other college bats this spring, or is it just a case of him not being that Jacob Berry first base DH, defensive question type, or the Kevin Parada being a catcher, sliding into a position where the Orioles, like you mentioned at the start, don't need help anytime soon with Adley and Mancini and Mountcastle in the pitcher?
I think it's just kind of an overwhelming bludgeoning of performance and pedigree with Brooks. This was a kid that was, a first-round talent coming out of high school, chose to go play at Cal Poly with his dad. I think his dad's the head coach, if I remember correctly. It seems like one of those things I should remember. But when, has performed everywhere he's been since getting on campus, both in the spring and the summer, had a really, really good Cape and U.S. national team run over the 2021 summer. I would say in Brooks' case, it is mostly built around fit relative to, say, like a Kevin Parada or even like a Daniel Susac. But that's not a knock against him at all. He would be, more than worthy of that kind of 1-1 underslot pick that we saw last year with Henry Davis, or like a 1-2 that we saw with Heston Kjerstad with the Orioles. This is definitely a top-end college talent and somebody that should really be off the board fairly quickly, whether it's with the Orioles or someone else. We have some other guys that we find comparable to him, but specifically with the Orioles, it's mainly the fact that they took, the bona fide, start to end, 1-1 to end all 1-1s in 2020 with Adley.
2019.
2019. I get the years confused. I knew that was wrong, but yeah. 2019. They took the start to finish 1-1 in all 1-1s in 2019 with Adley Rushing, with the explicit understanding that he was their catcher of the future, and a good bit of Kevin Parada's value is tied, I still think, to the fact that there can be, you can coax, some catcher traits out of him and stick him back there for, maybe, 70, 80 games. So it's just and with the, like I said, the lock jam at first base, and really core infield positions as a whole, it's just kind of like Brooks fits that mold, and again, above average to plus tools across the board, great combination of floor and upside. Those are kind of the traits that are really jumping for Brooks in that conversation.
There seems to be a consensus among outlets that cover the draft that Termarr Johnson's stock has slipped a bit this spring. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this. There's been some murmurs that it has to do more with his team's performance than it perhaps does with his own, but then others where maybe there is a little bit of concerns about where he's going to end up defensively if he's stuck at second base. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on that. How much has his stock slipped, if it has at all? And is it more because of outside factors, or does it have to do with his, long-term projection?
I think his stock slipped a bit going into the spring as teams started to really hone in on their reports and, put together, the pieces. There's not a lot of, 5'8", 5'9", 190-pound shortstops at the major league level. It's just nobody felt very comfortable that the body type would stick at shortstop. And, then you're getting into the conversation of how high can you take a high school second baseman. As far as it goes with scouting him this spring relative to his team, it was just hard to scout him. He chose to continue to play for his high school team, Mays High School, which I think I remember talking to somebody at the game when everybody was there to see Termarr, and I was like, this is probably the most scouts that have ever been at a game where nobody was committed. And he was like, yeah, that's probably right. It's just the rest of his team is just, an average, Atlanta, city high school team. There's just not a lot of talent around them. And it led to teams just kind of, not giving him anything to hit. And what kind of jumped out over the course of looks at Termarr was the intangibles. He's head and shoulders the best player on the field almost every time he steps on the field. And he's, playing with this team, and sometimes they'll end up, losing 15-0 and getting run ruled in the third or fourth inning, or they're really battling, to stay in a game, or it's against, a lower level team. They're going back and forth. And it was kind of a stress test on his patience, and, his makeup, and he passed with flying colors every time you go out to see him. Incredibly, gregarious guy. When he steps in the box, always talking to the umpires. Always the first guy to remind his team that there's a game going on. We need to be up. We need to be on the top step. We need to be cheering. Telling guys, on his own team, hey, we're playing in. Or it's just there was a lot of check boxes. There were a lot of boxes that were checked off in the makeup department just watching him on that team, and it was a really unique opportunity relative to his peers. I know, for comparison's sake, Druw, at Wesleyan, he's leading off, and behind him is a Mississippi State commit. Behind him is a Clemson commit, and behind him's a Georgia Tech commit. And there's nobody else committed to anywhere on Termarr's team. So it's a completely different environment than that you don't really see for most high level, top 10 preps. But it made it difficult to scout, just because there weren't that many pitches to hit. You're only getting so many swings. I expect there's probably going to be some guys out there to see him over the next few weeks just because there's probably just some guys that haven't seen him hit the ball hard yet this spring because there hasn't been many opportunities to see him hit. I went out and saw him, 7 or 8 times, and every time I was like, I feel like I've seen him enough, but I also haven't seen him enough because it's just not the same as going out and seeing, Druw or RJ or the Buford kids, or just it's a whole different ball game. But he did slide down a bit with the body concerns. I don't think it's really that, too far. This is still, one of the most decorated, prep hitters in terms of performance in a long, long time, with, pretty crazy grades on his hit and power. Even if it is, second base all the way, we're still talking about, a guy that really shouldn't be falling outside the top 10 with his combination of hit and power and that, offensive floor relative to his fellow preps.
Sounds good. A lot of good information there. Seems like a guy who had the most helium in the high school ranks. We talked about him a little bit earlier. Is Jackson Holliday, son of Matt Holliday. He wasn't mentioned amongst the Elijah Greens, Termarr Johnsons, Druw Jones of the world until more recently. But how does he compare to the other high school guys, and what do you see as his long-term outlook?
I really can't speak too much of it about Jackson. I'm an Atlanta area guy, so I can speak to the Atlanta area guys I've seen. But with conversations I've had, it really does seem like it was one of those things where he was on people's radars. He was definitely like a top follow in that Oklahoma, North Texas, area that he was in. And then as cross-checkers came in to see him, as scouting writers came in to see him, that was when these people with the breadth of knowledge of having to compare everybody across the country, they're going in to see the best of the best, said he belongs with Termarr, with Elijah Green, even with Druw Jones. Like he is a top 10 guy. And that's when it kind of all started to click, when word kept coming in about that. As it stands, great bat to ball skills, strong torque, athleticism and body suggest he's going to stick at shortstop. Bats from the left side. There's a lot of things working in his favor already. And then, going out there and playing and performing and, showing off what he can do really convinced evaluators up and down the chain that he belongs at the top of the top.
Love it. One last question about these high school kids and Elijah Green. We haven't really talked too much about, but you referenced earlier that he did seem to cut down on the strikeouts during his high school season this year.
Yeah,
I know he's still in the mix for 1-1 at this point. The latest mock draft at Prospects Live, there's a note in there that the Orioles have been heavily scouting him with Termarr and Jones. But was he able to answer some of the questions people had about his game this year? And overall, did his stock rise or fall a little bit with his play this year?
Well, I did get to see Elijah once, and when he came up to Lake Point for a tournament. And I will walk back something I said earlier about if there's a list based on, draft guys with, the highest of floor and ceiling, all mixed together for a future outlook. If Drew's not 1-1, then I have some questions. Elijah would be the X factor there. An Elijah Green that can even have a 5-hit tool is right there with Druw. It's one of the most ridiculous tool packages combined with present physicality that really has been in the draft in a long time. You have to probably go back to Justin Upton as a comparable in terms of present body physicality and the ability to generate power and speed. His measurables are insane. But the big question was just, is he going to hit? Are we going to see marked improvements in that area? And at the beginning of the spring, it didn't really look like that was the case. And I remember we were talking about we were just like, if this guy's, striking out 30% of the time, in high school, can we even really have him within the top 15? And that was a serious conversation. It was something we really had to talk over, and we kind of hedged and moved him back to the 10 or 11 range. And it's almost just like on cue, things started clicking. When I went and saw him, everything, his swing, he had shortened stuff up, slowing things down. There was still some swing and miss, but it was definitely a marked improvement in terms of approach and making sure that he wasn't going to strike out. That he wanted to make an improvement in that area. And as like the season's gone along, I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but you can check on Max Preps, what have you. His strikeout rate went down considerably, and now I think it's kind of closer to the 20% range. And with IMG, always kind of like the caveat there is, what is an IMG 20% strikeout rate at the high school level comparable to, any other, high school, regardless of division, just because of who they are and the kind of, competition they go out and seek to play and the kind of talent they have. So that was the question going in. And so seeing him lower it so much really did reinvigorate, opinion on whether or not Elijah was going to actually hit enough, to be, a top, 5 pick. And as there's more confidence growing in that hit tool, there's probably going to be more and more heat to the idea that he could be that 1-1 guy opposed to Druw. But I think at the end of the day, like, it's all going to come down to money. And if and particularly money in relation to how those two and their compatriots, Brooks, Jackson, Holliday, Termarr, are evaluated against each other and what they want. If Druw wants, gosh, I don't even know the full figures off the top of my head, but if Druw wants $8 million and Elijah wants $7 million, how far apart are those two in the Orioles' minds in terms of what their area guys have brought in, what the cross-checkers have seen, what the scouting directors have seen, what the data is telling them, mixing that all together. If they think they're comparable and Elijah's, willing to sign for $1 million, less, then it's probably going to be Elijah. if all other things are close to, equal or maybe even just a half grade off. So that's kind of where I think we are with Elijah right now. I think we're all still kind of, we've seen this go on for years and years, and we're not completely convinced one way or the other yet. We're not willing to say like this is all water on the bridge now by any means. But it is definitely encouraging to see that strikeout rate go down and adjustments being made over the latter half of the spring. So hopefully that meandering diatribe answered your question there.
That's good analysis, and certainly he's been kind of a complex player to look at over the last year or so because we've seen so much variance in opinion on him. We want to pull back, though, and kind of look at the draft as a whole and not just that 1-1 pick, because the Orioles already have one of the best farm systems in the game, and they have the 1-1, but they also have 5 picks within the first 81 and the largest bonus pool in this draft. So looking at that realistically, what can the Orioles expect to accomplish in those first 5 picks or so?
Honestly, I can't give you a solid answer one way or the other. I'm not super tapped into the Orioles or really that many teams. I just kind of go out there and do my thing. But I can give you kind of the standard answer that anybody would give you when they find out you have 5 picks in the first 80. They're going to get a lot of talent. They're going to get a lot of talent. And having that pool money and that flexibility, if you have 5 picks in the first 80 and you have the number 1 pick, I'm almost 100% positive out looking at it, you're going to have the most money to spend in this draft. And like I said, that's where kind of the calculus, comes in, of, mixing and matching and getting these dollar figures for, so many people within, the top 100 picks on our board, getting those numbers in, seeing, what your evaluations are, and just mixing and matching and adding together the best overall grouping of talent you can. In recent years, I think the Orioles have definitely had a good, idea of what they've wanted to do. People will point to the last 2 years with Kerstad at 2 and Colton Cowser at 5. as kind of, hair cutting measures to go and get guys like Kobe Mayo in 2020 and Carter Baumler last year.
2020 as well. Yeah.
2020. Well, Kobe Mayo and Carter Baumler. I get my years mixed up, but it's definitely, a defined strategy of this Orioles team in the past 2 years. But they also didn't have the number one overall pick in either of those years. And when you look at this board, it does feel like, all things considered, there's a definitive 1-1 talent to be taken. And the last time the Orioles were in that position, they went with Druw. So the 4 picks after that are going to depend on where they go with that first one. If they go with Druw, it's probably going to be, maybe some haircuts, maybe some at-slot guys, probably heavy on college for that reason. But if they go with, like, say, a wild card like Jackson Holliday, who might be willing to take, $6 million, 5.5, then that opens up a lot of room to wait and see, if, gosh, we've talked about this before, there's a ton of high school pitching in this class, and it's starting to look like a lot of them are moving down boards. There could be a lot of good high school pitching that falls down to that 40 and 50 range, where if you have the money, you can get some, good value at that point. So it's just it really is all going to depend. But in any situation like this, you'd rather have the most money than the least money, or the most money than even the second most money. It's just going to give you so much more flexibility, and no matter what route the Orioles choose to go in, they're going to get a lot of talent out of this draft. And that's just kind of it's basic, it's simple, it's not groundbreaking, but that's the truth.
Sounds good to me. Looking past the first round, could you highlight a few guys who you're particularly high on, who you think are likely to slot within the top 50 picks or so?
Yeah. I'll go into more specifics. Like I said, I kind of want to steer away from overall, like, what I think teams are going to do, because there's so many guys and so many I haven't seen.
Right.
But I can speak to the people that I have seen. Somebody that's been moving up our boards that we know kind of we have a good concept of figures being turned in on is Jacob Zibin from 10XL Academy. I saw him 2 weeks ago. One of the youngest pitchers in this class, one of the youngest players in this class. He's going to be 17 and a half years old by the time the draft comes around. He reclassified from the 2023s, originally from Langley, British Columbia. Moved down to Florida, enrolled in 10XL. Really started to catch evaluators' eyes with an uptick in velocity over the winter and early spring months. Pitched, I think, on the Langley Blaze tour, and there's tons of scouts there, and it's pretty much been the same level of heat that's followed him almost every start he's made down in Florida. And the one that I saw in Georgia is just everybody was in to see him. Talking 30, 40 guys coming in, people flying in, cross checkers, scouting directors. There's definite heat to come in and see this guy. And the reason is that he looks like a starter. He's got age on his side. He's got 3 pitches. He works from a lower slot. Fastball's around, 90, 94. He touched 95 early on. He's got a plus changeup, like a legitimate plus changeup. And, a typical, turn of phrase in the scouting parlance is, if you're going to turn in a first-round grade on somebody, they better have a plus tool. And we're not talking run or throw. They got to have something plus in their tool belt that's like a difference maker. And for Jacob Zibin, he has it. It's that changeup. It's ball off the table, sells the arm well, great differential in terms of vertical movement from the fastball. And he's also got, a good slider that I think can develop into a weapon for him as well. So it's a 3-pitch tool set that shows a lot of promise. There's a lot of mechanical things that are going to bode well for him metrically. The low release point that he has, it's not the most ideal fastball shape with his 2-seam or his 4-seam, but it's going to create a flatter vertical approach angle just because he's getting down, we're talking the low 5 feet release height. It's just going to help him out immensely with that. And releasing from that point allows him to really get side spin on his changeup and sweep on his slider as well. So that was just something that popped up, that I got a chance to see recently. In the Georgia area, if we're talking about guys that are falling into, give me some, numbers on where the Orioles are picking. I'm assuming they have a supplemental round pick.
We actually have, let's see, we have the first round pick, obviously 1-1, and the first of the second, first of the third, but we also have a pick in both of the comp rounds because we made a trade with the Marlins for Cole Sulser and Tanner Scott, so we got their comp pick in return.
Okay.
Trying to pull it up real quick, sorry. The exact specifics.
Yeah, I've got it right here. It's picks 81, 67, which is the comp B pick that Bob was referring to a moment ago in the Cole Sulser trade. The 42nd pick, which is the first pick in the second round. Those are some of the numbers where the Orioles are picking.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at our board right now, and I'm just going to run through guys that I can speak on, in particular ranges. So in kind of that supplemental range, I'll speak on a couple guys that I saw over the summer and the fall of last year. Both shortstops. Max Martin from New Jersey. We have him on our most recent board, I think, in that range. Toolsy, athletic, really good bat speed. Bordering on plus. When I was able to see him out in Jupiter for Worlds. Projects the stick up the middle. Has done nothing but hit in his spring campaign, and it's really just been kind of just his rise has really coincided with he playing high school ball in in the South Jersey, Philadelphia area. Attention really wasn't going to be drawn to him just by where he was playing. He needed to go out to events and be seen. And he played really well at East Coast Pro, hit incredibly well in Jupiter at WWBAs. And it's just been more and more, high-level evaluators are coming in and seeing the physical tools and the up-middle defense and the arm. And it's just been, sold on the fact that this is, a guy we want in our system and think can be a major league shortstop. And counterpart to that on the college ranks, Eric Brown from Coastal Carolina, really good Cape. Some question marks about if he's got the arm strength to stick at shortstop. I think it's kind of on the fringes, but you out there see him play. He plays, with his hair on fire. He's always looking for outs on defense, and nobody's questioning the hit tool. It's one of the strongest hit tools in the class. And really right up there at the top with the college ranks. I think last time I checked, 90% contact rate. Power's really been starting to come along and show up more. And he can lift the ball and take it out, to the pull side. And, if you can, reliably, drive balls to the pull side, you don't have to have, you don't have to hit the ball 115 miles per hour. You can keep if you can just hit a lot of balls in that 100 105 range, and you can lift and attack it out in front, you will generate a lot of power. And as such, it's just kind of as the power has kind of started to, it was a slow start power wise, but it's come along as the spring's gone along, and as such, it's just really kind of reaffirmed him in that comp round range. I know we had him around there coming out of the summer because he played really well at Katuitt for the Kettle years. Going down the list, Adam Major, right-handed pitcher for Iowa. We have him kind of the mid-40s. fastball, slider, emerging changeup. Had kind of a rough outing in terms of stuff, but it was because of back spasms in the tournament. So, kid, is going out there grinding at the end of the year. Love to see that. Great spin rates, was really, taking a step forward in terms of meshing his stuff with getting stronger and improving his command. Above average to plus on the fastball and slider, depending on the day you see him. And a guy I've seen recently, Jonathan Cannon out at Georgia, I've seen him a lot. Good 4-pitch mix. Nothing really jumps out at you as plus, but, does nothing but throw strikes and has really, developed a cutter that has helped him get through lineups more efficiently and not really have to rely on his fastball, which is kind of, two seam. It's not going to really miss a lot of bats. It's kind of a slurvy breaking ball that can sometimes that's a changeup that, is a bit inconsistent, but has really developed this nice, high 80s, low 90s cutter that you can really pound in on left-handed hitters. And it's really, helped him take a big step forward and moved him up into, strong second-round consideration. Going down the list here, more and more, a guy that I saw towards the end of the year that I actually like a lot is Carson Palmquist with Miami. It's not like the stuff's not going to jump off the page at you, but it's a projectable body. He works from a lower slot. He repeats his delivery. He's adapted towards being in a rotation and, has been, the rock that Miami team has leaned on. They're now in the college, they're on, hosting a regional this upcoming week, largely in part to him being the Friday night starter and going out there and pitching well pretty much every time he's been out there. Low release point on the fastballs really, helps with the shape of that. Good changeup, good breaking ball too. Just kind of a nice, middle to back of the rotation profile that seems like it's got a good chance of hitting. So I'm just running through as many guys as I can. Spencer Jones as well from Vandy, freak athlete, 6'7", runs, a 4.1 or 4.15 down the line from the left-handed batter's box, which you just don't see guys that size do. Has a chance to develop, plus game power, good approach at the plate, has the arm, has really kind of taken a step forward over the summer and this spring to reaffirm that he is a position player and he can provide some value in the outfield with his plus arm, considering he was kind of a big-time pitching prospect coming out of high school and then had to have elbow surgery. So just kind of a reaffirming season there too. We had him kind of in the mid-50s. So, yeah, those are just some guys.
Great stuff, man. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Will, thank you so much for your time and your insight tonight. Can you tell our listeners where they can follow you on Twitter? As we know, you're on the ground seeing a lot of these guys firsthand, posting videos, and they're probably going to want to see that as well.
Just follow me at Will Hoefer, at W Hoefer Baseball. So WHOEFER Baseball. That's where you're going to see the vast majority of my stuff. And I'll also, write about 2-3 posts a month on Prospects Live. That's prospectslive.com. And that's really where you're going to see the majority of my baseball related work. Going to be a lot of videos. Just a lot of videos, really. I think that's kind of what I've been known for is to be out there on the ground, grabbing videos of guys, and really, showcasing kind of the talent that's been around me in Georgia, because there's a lot of it. And I'm really looking forward to going out there this summer and, going to some of these tournaments and, maybe even a summer league or two and doing the same thing for the 2023s.
That's right. It's a great resource. We appreciate it big time.
Yeah,
definitely. Especially those high school kids. Cause living up here in the mountains of Virginia, I don't get a lot of high profile elite high school talent. So you're a great resource leading up to draft time.
Yeah. I mean, well, I kind of a good point. I mean, Chase the Water, somebody that's on our board in the first round. Just reason why, he kind of like popped up out of nowhere is because, played in West Virginia, didn't go to a whole lot of travel events, was just kind of a guy that needed to be seen. And, it didn't happen at the high school level. And when it happened at the college level, people took notice. So,
Love it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, I'm sorry for about those draft guys in the 40 to 60 range. I just figured you wanted me to rapid fire try to go off as many guys as I could.
Absolutely. Exactly. We need that information. It makes us sound smarter when we're like, oh, I know this guy.
And the easiest way to consume it is to go to prospectslive.com and look at our mock drafts, look at our draft rankings. That's where you're really going to find the resources, because Joe just does a great job with that stuff. Joe Doyle putting out those mock drafts. He's talking to everybody under the sun he could talk to get that information out there. And he writes very, concise, informative blurbs, and you can kind of, if you definitely have an idea of what your team drafts, you can look at that and get a feel for guys that could be falling into your lap at certain picks. So that would be my recommendation.
I 100% agree with that. Prospects Live, definitely one of my go-to places for fantasy stuff and regular baseball stuff. It's great resource.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate coming on, being able to talk about talk baseball, particularly draft prospects.
Yeah, of course. We'll definitely have to do it again sometime.
All right.
See you, Will.
That was Will Hoefer of prospectslive.com. A lot of good content there surrounding the draft, which, as a reminder, is in mid-July. It will take place this year to coincide with the All-Star break in Los Angeles at Dodger Stadium. Nick, Bob, just to kind of quickly recap, there are still a lot of questions about where the Orioles are going to go at 1-1, it seems, but the field is narrowing a bit here.
It might be narrowing, but I still don't – I'm going back and forth all the time on which guy I want the Orioles to take here. Obviously, Druw Jones sounds electric and maybe the highest ceiling of any of them, but Elijah Green's starting to sound better. Termarr Johnson, I'm still high on. Jackson Holliday, he's the new guy, and it's like, oh, haven't seen him before. Maybe that's the one. And Brooks Lee is even sounding decent if we want to save some money and have just a banger of a first 5 picks in the draft. So, yeah, I'm just as confused as ever, but still great information to have.
Yeah, the key thing for me there was I liked what he said about Elijah Green, since that was a guy who I feel like there's a lot of heat on early on, especially last year coming into the season. And then with the rise of Termarr, with the rise of Druw Jones and, the Orioles fans' fixation on it's going to be Brooks Lee and I'm going to hate this draft. Then I feel like Elijah Green's just kind of been cast off to the side, but good info from Will there on Elijah and his strong end to the year. So, yeah, I agree with Bob. Even after, talking with people about this draft, as an Orioles fan, you're still like, I still don't know, which is kind of fun. Makes us more fun.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting class to follow. And Elijah Green, I feel like, has already gone through – he went through the Kumar Rocker hype cycle, but he's actually managed to come back up on the other end a little bit. So he's definitely still in play for me at 1-1.
Yeah, speaking of Kumar Rocker, we can move on to what we were going to talk about before, but he's my pick for the back end of that. If he falls, give me Kumar Rocker there. I'll take a flyer on him as well. That's who the Orioles are saving money for.
I feel like there's a lot of guys that it's like there's a chance maybe they could slide into that 33rd pick overall and be great to grab him, like Dylan Lesko. He just went under the knife. Our team's going to want to take him. I would grab him if he's there. Probably won't be, but Kumar Rocker, same kind of thing. And who knows, maybe Judd Fabian will be there again, and this time we'll get our guy.
Yeah, it's interesting. We didn't ask him. I wanted to actually, but about the pitchers. So many of these top college pitchers are hurt. They're coming back from injury. or they're suspended. I think there's a kid from ECU is like suspended for the full year. So it'll be interesting to see how teams attack this draft with all those top pitching talents injured. Do they still go after them? Do those guys fall? Do the Orioles go after some of those guys? If they fall, take the risk there and rehab them themselves. The next couple weeks are going to be a lot of fun for Orioles fans, and draft night, I feel like, is going to be even more fun.
Absolutely.
Move on now to talk about the players that are currently in the system. We have to start with Grayson Rodriguez, who had an absolutely dominant start Friday night in a win over the Gwinnett Stripers. 7 shutout innings, 2 hits, no walks, 10 strikeouts. Overall, he throws 88 pitches, 68 for strikes. And the stat game score, which uses a variety of factors to kind of compile the quality of a start for a pitcher, came out at 83, which was by far Rodriguez's highest of the 2022 season. And Brooke, this is coming at a point where a lot of people are asking, just like the position we were in with Adley Rutschman a few weeks ago, when is Grayson Rodriguez going to get here? When will he be here? When will he be in the rotation? I know that there was some speculation that I didn't really buy into, that we would see him this weekend at Fenway Park. He's not going to be the 27th man for a doubleheader. That was never going to happen. But you still get the feeling that he's close. So, Nick, I'm going to start with you here. He's just, the performance at this point speaking for itself, what he's doing at Norfolk. Do you need to see much more for him at AAA?
I don't ever want to see him pitch in a Norfolk Tides uniform again. And I say that as a Norfolk Tides fan. He's got nothing left to prove. He is going to pitch at least one more time. He's got nothing left to prove in the minors, though, and I don't think anybody would disagree with that. You look at the swing and miss numbers, how much he's filling up the strike zone while still producing the whiffs that he is. That's just like sheer dominance that he's exerting over this competition these last couple of starts. We know he had those couple of hiccups there for a few starts, and some of that was the defense behind him, but some of that was he was just not hitting his spots, and he was just not having elite Grayson Rodriguez starts. But since then, his rebound from that has been absolutely phenomenal. And I really like that outing against Gwinnett, because we just had Justin Ramsey on last week, and he made it a point to mention, like, hey, these lineups we're facing with a lot of these quad A guys, these veterans like Gwinnett has, their lineup was nothing but guys of Alex Dickerson, Ryan Goings, Preston Tucker, a bunch of like 30, 33-year-old dudes who Rodriguez carved up. So I think that was a great outing for him. And I hate trying to predict this stuff after the whole Adley fiasco, but I just think that you look at the schedule ahead, like announce it Sunday night or sometime Monday, June 5th, June 6th, and say Grayson Rodriguez is starting Tuesday night at home against the Cubs. That would mean, if my math and calendaring is correct, that his second start would be on the road, but against the Royals, and then he'd be back home against the Rays. So that gives you 2 non-divisional games against bottom dwellers, which they're still professional lineups. They're not easy contests, but they are bottom of the dweller teams that he can get his settle in against before he dives into AL East competition. So, yeah, you could probably wait another 2 weeks and have him debut at home against the Nationals. But I don't think Orioles fans are going to wait extra for that moment.
No, I completely agree with everything Nick is saying. Like, he's obviously ready now. A friend of the show, Andy Koska, had tweeted out that the team wanted to see him get to 95 pitches in that outing, and he tried his best. They let him go 7 innings for the first time since in 3 years, since 2019 when he was with Delmarva, and it only took him 88 pitches to get through 7 innings. So he couldn't even get to that mark. I think the schedule just doesn't line up right now to get him in the first turn through here on this homestand, but I do think he will probably make that start that Nick said against the Cubs early next week. So yeah, it's exciting, but I think we'll see Zach Luther get a spot start maybe tomorrow, and then next time around, Grayson will be here, and it'll be kind of similar to Adley, where he'll make a home debut and then quickly go off and be on the road, come back. So yeah, I don't know what else he's got to do. He's got like a 1.59 FIP. It's insane. Could potentially come straight through and be a guy that just has great success right away, but don't be surprised if he struggles a bit, just like he did. For him, he struggled a little bit early in the season with AAA, but Orioles fans, we're ready for this.
The thing that I liked the most about that outing was Gwinnett was a team that gave him a tough time a few weeks ago. Now, they were in a little bit different spot. Those lineups are not exact copies of each other from the last time he faced Gwinnett to now. And I think the first of his start, if I'm not mistaken, Ronald Acuna was there on a rehab assignment. But still, tough lineup, a lot of veteran hitters, and they challenged him the first 2 times they faced him. They gave him a tough time. His command was not sharp. The defense behind him was bad. And then he just completely dominated him Friday night. It was not even close at all. They were not catching up to him. Pretty much whatever you want to see from Grayson Rodriguez in a start, you got it on Friday night and then some. The fastball was working. The batting practice fastball, otherwise known as a changeup, was also working. So, every pitch that he had in his arsenal was spot on that night.
I'm going to carve up a video of every changeup he throws that produces a swing and miss in the major leagues. And I'm just going to @Keith Law repeatedly until he blocks us. But yeah, I was pulled up his game log here. And after that outing on May 1st against Gwinnett, where 3 1/3, 6 hits, 5 runs, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts. Right. Since then, he's made 1, 2, 3, 5 starts. His worst start was, 6 innings, 2 runs, 4 hits, 9 strikeouts. That was his worst start against Charlotte. I mean, this is just 8 strikeouts, 11 strikeouts, 9, 10, no walks, 1 walk in his last 13 plus innings. I mean, there's really nothing else he can prove. And still not saying that he's going to get to the major leagues and be dominant, because he's probably not. I think it was actually, speaking of Prospects Live, I think it was Joe Doyle actually who tweeted out a while, it's probably been a week or so ago now, that look at all the top guys who are in the major leagues, Rodriguez, Bobby Witt, all these guys, and their numbers through the first couple weeks of the season, they were all bad. You look at Adley's numbers right now, they were bad. And I think Connor, Locked on Orioles, actually tweeted earlier today as well, some of those numbers and how Bobby Witt and Julio Rodriguez have improved. It's coming for Adley Rutschman as well. That's coming for Grayson Rodriguez. Those early struggles will probably happen, but you look at what he's doing in AAA and stretch him out in the major leagues at this point.
And that's what the season's all about. It's to get these guys up, get their feet wet, get these early adjustment periods out of the way now, so that next year they can jump right into the mix and hopefully be a little more content. I don't know if we're going to be a playoff team next year, but we should at least be more competitive and trending in that direction. And I had something else I was going to say, but I lost it.
We'll move on to the other big pitching story of last week, which was Carter Baumler, his first professional start and his first outing since undergoing Tommy John surgery in the fall of 2020. And it was about as good as you could have asked for. 3 innings pitched, no runs, a hit, a walk, 5 strikeouts, 43 pitches, so a pretty efficient 3 innings against the Charleston River Dogs. And I was watching clips of the start again earlier before we came on the show, and the thing that I saw in that outing was that fastball curveball mix was working really well. And the Charleston hitters often looked like they couldn't guess in a 2-strike count. Is it going to be the 92 to 94 fastball or the 80-mile-an-hour curveball? And Baumler had that whole arsenal going for him. Yeah, this has kind of been what has been advertised with Baumler a little bit. Athletic guy, good fastball, curveball, developing changeup, some projectability to add velocity. And it looks like in that limited sample, it was there. And I think that was about as good as you could have hoped for a guy that has barely pitched since 2019, because he lost most of his senior season in 2020 before being drafted by the Orioles and then missed all of last year after undergoing Tommy John surgery. So, Bob, what were your takeaways from Baumler's debut?
Well, first, my takeaway was Grayson Rodriguez has the first ever batting practice fastball that has a 70 grade. So that's what I forgot to say. It was totally worth it, right? Carter Baumler, it was so exciting to see him come out and just, with FCL season like a week or 2 away, just jumps right up to low A, Delmarva full season ball, and looks fantastic his first time out. Coming back from injury, his first strikeout is a 3-2 curveball at the top of the zone that was just a beauty, getting swings and misses. It'll be nice to see him get stretched out. Got 3 innings on this time out, but I'm sure he'll be 4 next time, 5 next time, and probably stop there. But it's just great to get a young, talented arm like this back healthy on the mound and getting these innings up. And we've talked about it a lot. He's a high ceiling guy that, we didn't see last year because of injury, but they're in the system. If they're international guys that aren't quite at the stateside yet, or they're guys like Carter Baumler, there's plenty of high ceiling pitchers in this organization.
Yeah, that debut was pretty huge. I think Zach mentioned he hasn't pitched regularly in competitive games since 2019, and those were high school games. 2020 gets wiped out. I think he made one appearance his senior year of high school before the pandemic hit. He gets drafted that summer, can't play because there's no minor league season. Then 2021, he's recovering from Tommy John surgery. And like Carter Baumler's been in the system for a while, but that start last week was his first professional outing. And it was dominant. I mean, yes, he's gotten games down in Sarasota, but I mean, those are extended spring training games. This was a real live minor league baseball game on the road against good competition. And he flat out dominated. And we've said this before that starting right after the 2020 draft, like Heston Kjerstad was a fine pick, high floor advanced college bat. His injuries and faults have been not of his own. Westberg's emerging as a really good piece right now. Hudson Haskin is breaking out. Servideo is, we hope he's back on the field soon. Seems like he will be. But the gems of that class were Kobe Mayo and Carter Baumler. And the hype around Baumler kind of disappeared because we haven't seen him in close to 3 years. There's a 3-year gap almost between him pitching in games, but he's healthy now. And I thought, just like Creed Willems, I thought both these guys would have been in the FCL all season long. Maybe at the end of the year, you bring him up as a reward. But Creed's already the full-time backstop in Delmarva and playing phenomenal defense behind the plate. And Baumler is now in the starting rotation in Delmarva. And it's clear that they're going to build them up in Delmarva this year. And then 2023, it's going to be full go for these guys with the potential to, end the year in like AA, I think, if all goes right. So Orioles think their timelines are pretty aggressive, and I think that's awesome because Carter Baumler is a guy who could fly up the prospect boards. I think MLB Pipeline, I didn't look at the others, but I didn't even look at our list. I messed up there. We got to hype up our own list more, but I think MLB Pipeline is like 29th. He could end this season much higher because I think if you look at the pitchers in the system, Bob mentioned ceiling. I think it's DL Hall, Grayson Rodriguez, Carter Baumler in terms of who has the highest ceiling in the system. Like I'd rank them in that order as well. And Baumler's ceiling, it isn't that much lower than Rodriguez or Hall, in my opinion.
No, not at all, especially with how young he is, because I think that when you have a pitcher that young, especially in today's game where teams are getting better at, teaching velocity and it's more of a focus in off-season workouts, that he could absolutely add a few miles per hour to that fastball. And by the way, we're not far off on MLB Pipeline. We had Baumler 28th on our preseason list.
We're smarter than them. We had him one higher.
Definitely expect him to move up, but a great outing and a great way to make his major league or his professional debut. Got a little ahead of myself there because I was transitioning to our next segment, which is about Cody Sedlock's major league debut, which came Sunday at Fenway Park. He was kind of put into a thankless position, having to come in with the Orioles already down big against a tough Red Sox lineup. And up until in the 8th inning where he hit a wall, he more than held his own over 3 innings against the Red Sox. And I think really, aside from whatever the numbers were, this is just a great story to see a guy that was a former first rounder who has been through so much, injuries, struggles. He was one of those pitchers that was struggling to get out of Frederick when Frederick was still high A, and comes into this regime. Again, at some point, Mike Elias and his regime could have decided to move on from Cody Sedlock. He manages to stick in the system, has been pretty effective the last 3 seasons, including 2019, and made his major league debut on Sunday. So, Nick, I'll just start with this. What sort of meaning does this have for you to see a guy like Sedlock, who's been through so much, get to the majors?
Personally, I pounded the table pretty hard for Sedlock last year, and every time I did, I felt like people were like, there's nothing there. Like, he's not going to make it. This isn't a guy you need to pound the table for. And not ever saying like he's going to be a legitimate, viable major leaguer for the next 10 years, but I thought he earned an opportunity to get this shot. And he's got it now. Struck out, I don't have the final line here. I just have the whiffs. He had 12 whiffs in that start. Or that outing, which was more than anybody. Bruce Zimmerman was next on the list in that game with 7. Nick Pivetta had 6. The changeup is where it was at. He got 9 swing and misses on the changeup. So 50% of the time, the guys swung at his Cody Sedlock changeup, they whiffed on it. So that pitch was clearly working. And to see him just make that major league debut and then hear the stories of, how him and his wife were living in a hotel room, just the two of them for a full year while he rehabbed from, these injuries, and they stuck through it. And for him to keep fighting, this could have been the guy, like, not just the Orioles gave up on, but he could have just given up on himself and moved on at this point. Like, why would you continue to grind through the minor leagues with that pay, with that treatment, those living conditions? And he stuck with it, and he was rewarded with this opportunity. And even John Mioli's piece today in his newsletter was pretty awesome. Like, the last regime didn't even care about Cody Sedlock. They didn't even know he was hurt. Like, that's a whole nother story about how ridiculous that previous regime was in certain areas of, minor leagues and player development. But I love stories like Cody Sedlock. If the Orioles aren't rebuilding, like, Cody Sedlock doesn't make the major leagues with the Orioles. And so guys like that get an opportunity. And it's really special to watch.
Yeah, if you want to see a difference between this regime and the last one, just read that story by John Mioli. My goodness. Yeah, super cool to see him get out there on the mound and perform pretty well. I think, they probably asked more than they would have if they weren't in the situation they were. So I thought he did pretty well given the circumstances. Now he's on the 40-man roster, so he can be a guy. Maybe he gets sent back down for the spot starter tomorrow night, but he's on the 40-man. He'll be back and forth, and he'll get his shot. And I would have thought the same for Felke Peralta before he got released from the organization. I would have loved to seen him make an appearance like this, and Blaine Knight still holding out hope for him. I know we continually put them on the same trajectory, but Sedlock got there first, and he proved that he could do it. And even though he was a first-round pick, not many, first-round picks, especially towards the end of the round, are going to make their major league debut and be big-time contributors. So even though people don't love the DJ Stewarts of the world, and maybe Sedlock was a disappointment, but he made it. He got to the majors, and that's pretty big. And I just wanted to read a tweet by Chris Resitar that he put out there this morning. He said, "One of the best parts about watching a rebuilding team is watching guys like Denny Reyes and Cody Sedlock. Achieving a spot on a big league roster is a testament to their hard work and ability. Reyes spent years in the minors for the Red Sox, but continued to work and got his shot. Sedlock is one of my favorite stories in the Orioles system. Injuries are a risk for any athlete, but he's had some exceptionally bad luck. Both of these guys forged their own path and can now say they are big leaguers. I think it's important to put things in perspective that just because fans want to see Hall and Rodriguez, it doesn't mean they shouldn't be excited to watch other guys achieve their dreams too." And I thought that was really well said.
Absolutely, 100%. Completely agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, Sedlock had a career high strikeout rate for Norfolk going into this before that call up. I mean, this is a guy who's still all those years, all those struggles, and continue to get better. And he was actually, as soon as Elias came in, I remember him kind of being like that early poster boy for the changes that this organization wanted to make with some of their pitchers. And he made those changes and adapted pretty quickly and was finding early success. So good on Sedlock. Hopefully he sticks around. My only critique, and it's not of Sedlock, it's of how apparently even Brandon Hyde and the Major League Club are going to handle Sedlock. This happened all the time in Norfolk. They kept sending him out just one inning too long. It's like he got through 3 innings, and it would happen in Bowie. It happened in Norfolk. It's happened the last 2-3 years with Sedlock. Like, he does his job. Take him out. He's a 2-3 inning guy. You don't need to stretch him out anymore. You got 3 really good innings out of him. I was hoping he wasn't going to come back into that game against Boston, and he did. And unfortunately, the final line doesn't look all that great. But luckily, I think overwhelming the same popular sentiment after that game was, congrats to Cody Sedlock. You pitched really well. So I was happy to see that as well.
Move on to some different news here concerning a player that was also on Norfolk's roster, and that's Jahmai Jones. We got a little bit of a surprise over the weekend when the Orioles announced that Jones had undergone Tommy John surgery in Cincinnati. The surgery was a success, but he would be out for the remainder of the 2022 season. Shortly thereafter, the Orioles designated Jones for assignment, and I wanted to get into a quick kind of primer on technicalities concerning injuries, because I was not fully aware of this until after it happened. Normally, when a player is out for the year like that, they can be placed on the 60-day IL and not occupy a 40-man roster spot as long as they stay on the 60-day IL. Jones could not, though, because the injury occurred in the minor leagues. So in order to put him on the 60-day IL, the Orioles would have had to promote him to the major leagues, then add him to the 60-day IL. They instead chose to designate him for assignment. If he clears waivers, I would imagine that he will be back in camp with the Orioles next spring. Tough luck for him, because this is a player who looks like he was going to be a factor for this major league team at some point, and for the first 7 or 10 games of the season was about as hot as any hitter in Norfolk's lineup. Then quickly cooled off, and I have to wonder now, in hindsight, was this injury starting to bother him? Did that affect his performance? I don't know if we'll ever know that, but Jones out for the rest of the year. And Bob, just wanted to get your reaction to this. Certainly a surprise, even though we had not seen Jones in Norfolk's lineup since early May.
Yeah, it was definitely a surprise when all of a sudden, he got Tommy John surgery. We knew he was out and he was hurt with something, but we didn't know what. So that was a surprise on its own. And then when I found out he was DFA'd, I was definitely thrown back a bit at first, just because I'm like, why didn't they just put him on the 60-day IL? And now that everything's come out, it makes a ton of sense why they did that. I think he's a guy that probably, with the continued depth at the upper ends of the minor league system and more and more guys needing to be added on the 40-man, even this year as well as this coming offseason, going to be some difficult choices for Elias and company to make there. So why not take him off of the roster now while he's fresh off of surgery and probably no team is going to claim him? And then, you don't have to worry about that later when maybe someone would be willing to make a play on him. And I think the team still wants him in the organization. I think it's just one of these risks that they made, kind of like with Hunter Harvey over the offseason. That one backfired, but it's Hunter Harvey and he's still hurt all the time. So it wasn't that big of a deal. And same with Zach Pop and would have been with Vespi if there had been a Rule 5 pick. So yeah, I think they're just going to try to get him through the waivers and rehab him up and see what he can do in this organization. But it is such a shame for the guy because it felt like he was pretty close to getting another shot here. I don't know. I mean, Rougned Odor has been playing better of late, but I still think fans would probably prefer to see a guy like Jahmai Jones go out there and try to prove that he can be a major leaguer.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of what happens, Orioles Twitter at least will never forget Jahmai Jones, since it caused a literal civil war among Orioles fans last year. But like, it does suck for him. Like, it's terrible. It's never good timing for an injury, especially one like this. But I wish him all the best if another team does decide to claim him and try to finagle their roster and rehab him. But if he sticks around at the same time, he's going to be a 26-year-old, I think, when he comes back, who has yet to prove it at the major leagues. And you mentioned all that talent coming up. Is there going to be a spot for him? Like, he's going to have to work even harder to break through that now. And honestly, like, I don't want to sit here and kind of not trash the guy, but speak bad about him when he's hurt now out for the year. But, despite that hot stretch, like, Jahmai Jones has still been the same Jahmai Jones year after year in the minor leagues. Like, he's a 220, 230 at best hitter with a league average to slightly below league average WRC plus every year. Like, no power, not a real threat on the base paths. We talked about the defense last year, and that was a big joke on social media and stuff, but he'd make the highlight reel play once or twice a week, but every other night he's botching routine plays. And so it would have been nice to see him fill that Chris Owens role, whatever role Chris Owens thinks he's pretending to fill right now in Baltimore, but Jones just couldn't do it. And he's never been that consistent player. And now I think all the attention is now going to turn to Terrin Vavra. But unfortunately, like, I will throw caution there that Terrin Vavra also has a very long injury history as well. So, but hopefully he gets early and he's back on the healthy training in Norfolk and in the big leagues soon, and Chris Owens is out the door. But yeah, Jahmai Jones is a tough one. All the talent and athleticism in the world to become a stud major leaguer, but I think just one of those guys who unfortunately just wasn't able to put it all together.
At some point in June, the Norfolk infield is going to look like Jordan Westburg, Gunnar Henderson, Terrin Vavra, and who cares at first base? Tyler Nevin? I don't know. But that important part of the infield is going to be pretty exciting there.
Don't forget Caden Grenier, who is on one of those hot streaks right now. I mean, we've seen Grenier do this before, but it's still fun when it happens.
Another contender for that Chris Owens throne. You never know.
He is. Honestly, like, put him up there as well. But I feel like Chris Owens he's versatile, as some writers like to point out, and he is that veteran. And I'd imagine, as much as it sucks for fans, like, from an organizational perspective, I get why you want to go with the veteran there over the rookie, especially a rookie like Caden Grenier. But yeah, I would love to see Grenier get a shot as well. He's in that Cody Sedlock role as well, I think. Like, let's just give him an opportunity because he's grinded his way. He hit like a $180, $190, and like Frederick, and really struggled as well. But he's continued to get better as he's moved up the ladder, which has been surprising to see. So, if anything, a good shout out to Caden Grenier.
We'll go now to our final segment where we shout out players outside of our top 30 prospects list who have done something we want to highlight, whether it's a good week, a good game, something interesting in their stat line that we think is going unnoticed. I'm going to start with Nick because he picked the player who was our most recent baby bird of the day and probably one of the most under-the-radar hitters in the whole system right now.
Shout out to Dan Duquette, the man, the international man in Baltimore. I'm going with Isaac Bellany. Like, there's a Dan Duquette signing, a leftover from that regime. He hit 375 last week, an 1150 OPS. Sunday, he went 5 for 5 with he hit for the cycle, plus another single, plus a walk. So reached base in all 6 plate appearances, and just an unbelievable game for Delmarva. I think going into the year, Bellany was overlooked just because he'd been in the system for a while and was part of that group who, I think a lot of evaluators thought that group, the young international players who 2020 was supposed to be their first full year of pro ball, that's the group that was probably hit the hardest by the pandemic. But clearly Bellany is stepping up, and now he's been one of the most consistent, probably the most consistent bat in Delmarva's lineup all year. And now he's got an 866 OPS. The power's coming. He's already up to double-digit doubles. Like, if the strikeout numbers improve, because they're not great, but if they can improve, I think Isaac Bellany is a legitimate prospect to watch here, at least as he continues to rise up. But he had a fantastic week. And my pitcher, I'm going with Jake Przina. It's kind of a tough week. I'm not going to lie, to find the gems for the pitchers. But top guys performed as expected. Aberdeen rotation, I could have went there again, but I'll spread the love a little bit and go to Aberdeen's bullpen. Jake Przina, 3 2/3 scoreless innings this past week, struck out 4, allowed just 1 hit. And he had hit first month of the year, he had an ERA of 8.53, 308 average against, a 1.74 whip. That was in April. Through the month of May, a 0.90 ERA, 125 average against, and a 0.60 whip in 10 innings. So great job by him. And he's just one of those guys in the system who I have a soft spot for. Like, I don't particularly see a path to the majors for Przina, unfortunately. But no matter what level he's at, what team he's with, he's just one of those guys that I'm always going to cheer for.
Good stuff. I'll go with, first I'd like to shout out Maverick Hanley, who had a fantastic week. Love to see him continue to hit better. But my real pick for the hitter is T.T. Bowens, who is repeating high A after spending half of the season, or the tail end of last season there. 24 years old, first base DH type, but he has more than doubled his walk rate from the 123 plate appearances he had with the Ironbirds last year, from 8.1%, which is around average, to 17.6%, which is really fantastic. He's still striking out a little bit above 30%, and he only has 3 home runs, even though he has ridiculous power. But his ISO is still 172, which is only a little bit below his 188 from there last year. And as we've said, Aberdeen's a tough place to hit it out of the ballpark. Got a WRC plus of 142. So I think he's going to be pushing for a promotion to AA Bowie at some point relatively soon. And we saw what Andrew Daschbach did once he got out of that Ironbird Stadium and into the friendly confines of Bowie and started hitting for some more power. So I think we might see that from Bowens. And my pitchers, yes, I said pitchers, I'm cheating again, are Moises Chase and Raul Rangel, who I was scared when we heard about their injuries, like, they could be out for the year. Who knows what this is? Hopefully not Tommy John, something terrible like that. And first, shout out to Eric Garfield. He was recording the extended spring training game. And what do you know? Raul Rangel pitched an inning there. So he's on the way back. And then all of a sudden, Sunday, Moises Chase, he's back, starting for the Shorebirds, pitches 2 innings, didn't give up an earned run, struck out a batter. So, and whatever the results were, it was just nice to see them healthy and back on the mound. So the hype train's back on for those two, and it was a good week for that.
I'm going to stick in Aberdeen for my hitter, and that is Jacob Teeter, who has had a really impressive month. He had a go-ahead home run on Friday night to give the Ironbirds the win over the Wilmington Blue Rocks. But I'm going to read off his number for the month of May. He's had 89 plate appearances across 22 games. He's hitting .290 with an 858 OPS, 3 homers, 17 RBIs. Aberdeen continues to win games, but you'll notice the month of May has not been the kindest to their lineup. Cesar Prieto was out for a little bit and then was promoted to Bowie shortly after getting off the IL. Connor Norby was on the IL for a little while for getting hit in the face. John Rhodes has been banged up lately. So Teeter has really filled a hole there for the Ironbirds and has been a big reason why they have managed to stay successful. So, and with some of the numbers here in Wilmington, I'm going to give them to you real quick. The 6 games against the Blue Rocks hit 304, the 915 OPS. That's 7 hits and 23 at-bats, 7 RBIs in 6 games, 3 walks against 3 strikeouts. So after a slow April, Teeter really heated things up in the month of May, which is a good time for me to mention that on next week's show, we will give out our Player of the Month awards for the Orioles affiliates. So check that out. But then I'm going to go Delmarva pitcher and Hugo Beltran. Beltran pitched a scoreless inning the other night against the River Dogs on May 25th. Did give up 2 runs on Sunday against the River Dogs, but overall, this has been a guy that's quietly been a really effective reliever for the Shorebirds this year. 2.6 ERA in 13 games with 18 strikeouts and 17 in the third innings. And I love this, kind of story because this is a very under the radar player because the Orioles picked him up in a trade last July with the Dodgers for cash considerations. He never actually played stateside for the Dodgers. He had been in the DSL, but had never played stateside for them. Debuts last year in DSL for the Orioles, and then makes it to Delmarva this year. So kind of an under the radar name. It's just 21 years old, but somebody worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, you talk about movement on a fastball. Hugo Beltran, I finally sat down and really watched one of those outings. It might have been that first one against Charleston, but holy movement. There's no wonder he's striking out everybody in the lower levels of the minor league. But also, we failed to mention probably one of the bigger names that we continue to perpetuate this. The fact that Darryl Hernandez continues to be extremely overlooked in this system. He gets promoted to Aberdeen last week, and I tweeted this out this morning. He hit 318, 400 on base percentage, a double, a triple, 4 RBIs, drew 3 walks, went 4 for 4 in stolen base attempts. He tied Jacob Teeter with the most hits in that series last week. That was his first series in high A Aberdeen. He's still just 20 years old. And this guy's got it's chip on his shoulder. I don't know what it is, but he's got something to prove. And he is proving a lot of people wrong, I think, with this performance. It's early in high A, but fantastic start to his high A career.
Absolutely.
We will be back next week with more coverage of the Orioles minor league system. We'll have our players of the month. We're also joined by Eric Garfield next week, correct, Bob?
I never heard of him. I don't know what you're talking about. He will be joining us. I think the DSL and FCL seasons get started next Monday, so we'll get those rosters over the weekend, I'm sure, and we'll break it all down, and it'll be exciting.
Yeah, absolutely looking forward to that. In the meantime, check out BaltimoreSportsAndLife.com for all the latest coverage in the Orioles, Ravens, and more. Join the message board there, hopping in and discussing with fellow readers of the site as well as contributors. And follow us on Twitter at BSL on the Verge. We'll have clips throughout the week as well as some news covering the Orioles system and some teasers for next week. So thank you to Will Hoefer for appearing on tonight's episode. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to On the Verge.
High Five Casino. Social casino fun with real prizes and big Vegas hits. Have you had your high five moment today?
Hey there, I'm Bob. Before High Five Casino, my high fives were more like low threes. But after my high five moment, boom, high fives all around.
That's the spirit. High Five Casino is turning every moment into a high five moment. Visit h5c.fun. That's h5c.fun and start spinning and winning today. High Five Casino. High Five Casino is a social casino only. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Play responsibly. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
The United States Border Patrol has exciting and rewarding career opportunities with the nation's largest law enforcement organization.
Earn great pay with outstanding federal benefits and up to $20,000 in recruitment incentives. Learn more online at cbp.gov/careers/USBP.